A big thank you to all the companies that are helping support the Real ResQ podcast. SR3 Rescue Concepts, Life Saving Systems Corporation, Breeze Eastern, and Flippin' Coffee. If you've not sent these companies an email, you absolutely need to. You wanna know why? Well, it's because they all work together. When you email them, they will absolutely set you up for success. All of them have a great working relationship with each other. For helicopter training, contact SR3. For hoist information, contact Breeze Eastern. For rescue equipment, contact LSC. And for a great cup of coffee, contact Flippin' Coffee. SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. They are a training company that can help your training program with standards, safety, and maybe just an FAA refresher. They are ready to help your agency keep up to date with current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. The training staff is awesome, with certified flight instructor pilots and experienced crew members that offer training in rescue, medical, tactical, firefighting, and ground operations. SR3 has partnered with Petzl to assist with any personal protective equipment inspection courses and the highly specific Lazard, which is used for helicopter, cliff, and mountain rescue. In addition to that, if you listen to our episode with Hans and Alvin, episode 10, and they used it on a boat rescue, which was amazing. So contact them today. SR3RescueConcepts.com. That's SR3RescueConcepts.com, or see them over on Instagram at SR3_rescue. Then we have Life Saving Systems Corporation, who manufactures the world's toughest helicopter rescue gear. From their Triton harness, which is my favorite rescueman harness, to the rescue basket, litters, and of course the most popular hoist hook in helicopters, the D-Lock. The team at LSC cuts, bends, welds, and machines these products into existence every day. We do our work so you can do yours. LSC, tough gear for tough jobs. Check them out today at lifesavingsystems.com and follow them on Instagram at Rescue Gear. That's at ResQGEAR. Breeze Eastern. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuer operations and those rescued has not. Contact Breeze today by visiting breeze-eastern.com. That's breeze-eastern.com. Then we have Flippin' Coffee. At Flippin' Coffee, we roast each batch to perfection to bring a smooth, delicious cup of coffee that you won't find in most other brands. We like to keep it simple, brewing real coffee, using real ingredients for real coffee drinkers. Contact them today at flippincoffee.com to order your bag of freshly roasted coffee beans. As a bonus, you type in the promo code, all capital letters, REALRESQ, and you get 10% off. Thank you to all of our sponsors who are helping make this podcast grow. It's much appreciated. It is such an honor and privilege for me to be able to sit down with some of the guys from the beginning of the United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer program. These guys are the ones that really paved the way, and they're the ones that set the standard for the rest of us that came through, and I'm very thankful for that. This guy not only paved the way, but he was one of the first guys that dropped into the water and earned the highest award you could possibly get in a peacetime environment for aviation. It's awesome. This whole story is incredible. I hope you enjoy it too. So please welcome United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 46, Mr. Jeff Tunks. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real ResQ Podcast. Today I have an amazing guest with me. I'm super stoked to have him here. United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 46, Mr. Jeff Tunks. How are you, Jeff?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me today.
Are you kidding me?
Great to
I
be
am
here.
stoked to have you. I really, really am. So, again, thank you so much for coming on. And you were one of the guys that really paved the way for us, us younger guys, the next generation. And it's an honor to have you here. So, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. So if you don't mind, would you just kind of tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and how you got into Coast Guard and search and rescue in general?
Well, I live in Fairhope, Alabama right now. I've retired here out of ATC Mobile back in 2007. So I've been retired for a few years now.
Nice.
I went into the Coast Guard in 1977. Went to
just for the record, I wasn't even born yet. I don't want to throw that out too bad, but
thanks,
I had another year.
Anyway, come out of boot camp and went to Kodiak on the Coast Guard Cutter Conference. And it was in the beginning, of course, I did not like it. But as like a lot of other things, in the very end, it was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. I got to go to Alaska. I got to do some really incredible things, being out on a ship, and got to see some really unbelievable things that you will not see in a normal lifetime you won't see. And I learned to appreciate a hot cup of coffee out of a styrofoam cup, and I learned to appreciate what it's like to be incredibly seasick. But did my year in Kodiak, got off the ship, and I went to ASM school in what was then in Lakehurst, New Jersey. It was a Navy school.
Yep.
And went there for 4 months, and even though the Navy does a very good job, it really wasn't geared for us. You really didn't get that much out of it. I mean, you got a basic information on survival and equipment, parachute packing, and that was it. Then went to Mobile, out of there, ATC Mobile, and pretty much got trained there on all the aspects of rescue and survival equipment, being an air crewman in the 52 and a drop master in the old 131.
Wow.
And then one day I walked into the shop and somebody mentioned something about the rescue swimmer program. I had no idea what it was. And apparently it had kind of slid in there from the Marine Electric, which had sank, the congressional hearing. The Congressman asked the Coast Guard, why didn't you deploy people in the water? The Coast Guard said, we don't do that. Of course, Congress was incredibly surprised that the world's premier life-saving service did not deploy people into the water.
Right.
So hence the Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer Program was mandated by Congress. I'm sure you knew that.
Oh, yeah.
And so nobody thought it would take off. You started having these few guys that started going to swimmer school, but nobody really believed that the Coast Guard would stick with it. Well, obviously they did. And probably 6 to 8 months after the first time I'd heard about the program, I went down to Pensacola, Florida, went to rescue swimmer school with two other coasties, Ron Junta and Tom Hurley.
Ron Junta, I know that name. Yeah. And who was the other guy?
Tom Hurley and Ron Junta.
Tom Hurley. Okay.
Yeah,
I know the name.
He made chief and eventually was solid dude. And of course, Ron was too. Ron's one of the best guys. So we made the very best of rescue swimmer school, got through the thing, and we started out with 36 guys, and out of the 36, 12 graduated.
Oh, wow.
So it was a tough school. Tom went back to Sitka, and Ron went to Cape May to train future rescue swimmers.
Oh,
that's
wow.
what he did at Cape May, New Jersey. So that's where the program was in. So I went to Sitka out of there, and then started the rescue swimmer program up there.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I got there in June, and we started training and went online in October. And
the whole program started in October, right after you guys graduated.
The Sitka program, I believe East City was the first group that went online.
Right.
And then I can't remember who maybe Clearwater was.
Okay.
But anyway, I know that we came somewhere down the line shortly after the rest of the guys did, and went online in October and did a lot of training, got everybody ramped up, and started standing duty in October. And it was really was it not that, of course, not that much had happened, and because we could land in the water with the amphibious helicopter,
right,
a lot of people were still thinking that we could always do platform pickups,
right.
and because I know in Kodiak about a year before that, a guy named Tom Walters, like this turbo helicopter pilot, he had landed an H3 in like 30-foot seas, and literally
Holy
a
cow.
couple of survivors literally washed in to the cabin of the H3, and he was able to lift off. And so, I mean, it was a great risk, but he could do it. He had proved he could do it, but it was not something that, I mean, you were just putting everybody in danger when you would do something like that.
Oh, the whole helicopter as well. Man, that's, and for me, looking at a 30-foot wave, which I have been in, that's no joke. And when you're in a 30-foot wave, and even with an amphibious helicopter, that's one of those things. You're like, nope, I don't want to put it in the water.
Well, you have to manage your collective so well with the pitch of your rotors.
Yeah.
You can't let them droop. You've got to keep them up for the next wave coming in. You can't sit there very long. You got to be very concerned about your tail. And that's a lot of it. Of course, we've lost Coast Guard helicopters, several of them, due to tail strikes. So there's so many things that can, and there's so many things that can happen. The plane's just so big.
Yeah.
And and you got to be careful with your power. How much power you actually put into your head, and because you'll over torque the thing, and then you got a new set of problems. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, we went through, and of course, we had a few cases where guys were lowered down to start pumps, a few medevacs. But back in those days, you had room to haul the flight surgeon and a corpsman, and of course, the command a lot of times would want to do that just for the upgrade in medical treatment.
Right.
You take a doctor, you got a doctor. Of course, they like to get their flight time like everybody else, and the excitement. And let's face it, as you go through life, you learn that challenges, whether you like them or not, are gifts from God, and you have to embrace every challenge, whether you like it or not, because what do you have at the end of the day if you've not embraced those challenges and use those to the full extent to write the story of your life? So I began to learn that while the challenges are not something you particularly want to see, you've got to embrace them, because they came from something much greater than we are, so that's something that I learned distinctly. And I tell that to everybody. Don't fight a challenge. Now, if you make a bad decision, you got to live with it.
Right.
But a challenge, you've got to take it on, and you got to beat it, got to conquer it. So
words of wisdom right there. Beautiful.
well, it's I mean, it's some days I wish I could go back and relive it, because I think I would do a better job, but I can't. So because knowledge is golden. Yeah. And it's not that somebody didn't try to pass it down, just I wasn't listening, or had something else better to do.
At one point or another, we are all young and dumb. So
oh my God.
I think we're invincible, and then all of a sudden you get a reality check and be like, yeah, by the way, you're not.
That's right. But as we begin to move on in Sitka, we had incredibly skilled crew up there, pilots, flight mechanics. I mean, they were some really salty dudes up there, and great pilots. Guys that were confident. I always wanted to make sure that my pilot felt as good about flying a helicopter as he did about driving a car.
Wow.
And and they did. And even though the navigational equipment and the ability to have technical support when you fly is much greater now, those guys literally flew by the seat of their pants. And I mean, they were just incredible. They were incredible aviators, pilots, and and that's what they were. They wanted to be known as pilots. That's what they did. A lot of guys. We had a lot of direct commission aviators that come out of the Army that were Vietnam guys, and had flown low and over the jungles, and and does, did stuff like that. I still remember hearing pilots. I have the guy that lives right next door to me, well, like 4 houses up, Lonnie Mixon. And excuse me, Lonnie is the most decorated Coast Guard aviator in history. He's in the Naval Aviation Museum.
Wow.
A very incredibly humble guy. And let me tell you something. You read about his cases in Vietnam. He was backing up Jack Rittisher when Jack Rittisher was killed in Vietnam, and he was backing him up. They went there together. And so when you talk about the history and the kind of aviators that we had is incredible. But anyway, that's another story. But anyways, as we moved into the year, not a lot was going on. And of course, Steve had his case, which gave us a breath of fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought that we're going to be here. And then rolls around December 10th, 1987.
So then this would be yours. And I would love to, like I told you this a little bit ago, I'm going to read this because this is incredible. And then I would love for you to walk us through it because this is something else. Citation to accompany the award of the Distinguished Flying Cross to Jeffrey D. Tunks, Aviation Survivalman, 2nd Class, United States Coast Guard. Petty Officer Tunks is cited for extraordinary heroism during an aerial flight on the night of December 10th, 1987, as a rescue swimmer on Coast Guard HH-3F 1486, engaged in a perilous rescue of a man and his son from fishing vessel Bluebird, which sank in a storm, tossed waters 10 miles south of Sitka, Alaska. The helicopter launched into the blinding snowstorm and severe turbulence to assist a stricken 26-foot fishing vessel floundering in 30-foot seas. The 2 survivors abandoned the vessel as it rolled and went down by the stern. After several unsuccessful hoist attempts in the 70-knot winds, Petty Officer Tunks voluntarily deployed into the frigid, angry seas. Swept back 75 yards from the victim as he was being lowered, Petty Officer Tunks struggled through the towering waves to reach the survivors, who were now immobilized by the icy water entering their survival suits. He calmed and reassured them. Then with a Herculean effort, what a great word. Then with Herculean effort, Petty Officer Tunks was able to pull the survivors away from the sinking vessel, grab the sea-tossed rescue basket after several attempts, and roll them into the relatively safety of the basket for hoisting. Later, as Petty Officer Tunks was himself being hoisted, the helicopter was driven backwards by particular violent gusts. Petty Officer Tunks was smashed into the breaking waves, which ripped away his mask and snorkel and injured his back. Petty Officer Tunks' remarkable fortitude and exceptional daring in spite of imminent potential danger saved the father and the child from perishing at sea. His courage and devotion to duty are most heartily commended, in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Holy cow, Jeff. Like 30-foot seas, 70-knot winds, boat sinking, 2 people in the water, and they're, come on. It's
well, thank God for a thesaurus so that they could come up with those great words.
Right? Herculean. That's brilliant.
Who could figure it?
Wow.
Well, it was an amazing case, something that I never saw myself being involved with. I was just a guy that came in to stand the duty. Like I was saying, we had been led to believe that the use of a swimmer was something that was going to be so rare that it may or it may never happen.
Wow.
But when I went into duty that night, it was a normal, cold, kind of a blustery evening, but no bad weather had been forecast. Matter of fact, we went in, and of course it gets dark at 3 o'clock in December.
Right.
You're only a couple of weeks away from the shortest day of the year.
Yeah.
And so when we took off about 4:30 and did a night flight or a training flight. Went out, did a few rescue swimmer deployments. Did some, remember back in the old days in the H3, you would practice a patch or two, precision approach to a coupled hover. do some approaches, and then you come back in and landed, and we all got cleaned up, and the Ready H3 that night had been sent to Cordova. So they called in the backup crew, and that backup crew consisted of John Whidden, who was our engineering officer, Greg Breithaupt, who was a pilot, one of our pilots, and then Carl Saylor, flight mechanic, Mark Milne, the avionicsman. So went ahead and got back, cleaned everything up, rinsed off, got my gear back and ready to go, and went and ate. And then I'd say about 7:15, I was up in the shop doing some work, piddling around, doing something, and the assault alarm goes off. Boat sinking at the Scary Rocks, and that was about 6 to 8 miles. It was a kind of a treacherous area there. We called it Very Scary Rocks, and it was kind of a treacherous area there, and a lot of salmon fishing going. Okay. I mean, not salmon, but halibut grounds were in there.
Nice.
So we went downstairs and put on our gear, and we, as we were walking through flight line, John Whidden, the pilot, said, "Hey, Jeff, looks pretty good tonight. We may have to use you." I'm like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Okay, all right, sure, whatever you say."
Yeah.
And as we went out, we got on the plane. I mean, I was shocked at how the weather had changed. I mean, it was really blowing hard, and we loaded up and got into the plane, and it was wheels in the well pretty quick. And we immediately took off and started hitting snow so heavy we lost the radar. So we started kind of. You got to understand, there was, back in those days, you had nowhere near the avionics equipment that you have now, in order to lead you out on a case. We had no backup. So we began to struggle our way out up through Sitka Sound, as we'd gotten this Mayday call from this 26-foot fishing vessel, Bluebird. Co-pilot was talking to him, and he was telling us his situation, which was dire at the time. What had happened was he had anchored himself, Jim Blades, on the fishing vessel Bluebird, with his 6-year-old son, had anchored in behind St. Lazaria Island, which is out at the mouth of Sitka Sound, right off of Mount Edgecombe. If you've ever seen pictures of Sitka, you see the Mount Fuji looking volcano that sits outside of Sitka.
Okay.
And on a different island. And as we begin to make our way out there, he had anchored in there, and his anchor dragged, and he came down on a rock and crushed the bottom of his boat. As he said, as he even said to me later, he said it was a sickening feeling, because he knew what was up. He had his 6-year-old son there.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, "Listen," he said, I didn't take the boy out there for a joyride. He helped me, because any kind of help, he said he would steer the boat for me, and he would do these different things for me as we were underway. So, because he felt a great amount of guilt for having him out there in the first place. Later on, we would find this out. So we began to make our way out there, and we had no radar, so we really couldn't see anything. So we were making our way up along the coastline there, and battling these winds, which we had not forecast and were not expecting. As we made our way up there, we asked the skipper to give us a 10 count, so that we could put it up on the directional finder and kind of have him vector us in there in a way. So we began to make our way to him as he gave his, 10, 9, 8, 7 count to lead us into him. And shortly before he hit 2, Carl Saylor, sitting in the mechanic seat, say, "Hey, I got a light over here at 2 o'clock," and then it disappeared. So we continue to make our way up there, and the light comes up again. He's basically, what he's doing, he's riding the surf.
Oh,
and
wow. Yeah.
So we begin to make a right-hand turn to do a patch to come in to do an approach to the water. During the patch, the wind catches us and pushes us about 6 miles away from his location. So there we are. We're like, how'd this happen? So we begin to make our way back over to him, because by this time we'd locked on a location to him, and begin to make our way over there to him. The father's in total, Jim Blades is in distress now, because he knows he's going down, and he's up on channel 16. And not only is Jim's wife listening to us, what's going on, but the entire town of Sitka is listening to what's going on. He's heavily involved in the church, a real strong Christian man. And so the entire town of Sitka now is listening on channel 16 as this case unfolds.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we're talking to him and he's hearing everything. His wife's calling him. She's calling the H3. I mean, she's calling us the H6. And of course, she's wanting to know what's going on. We're saying, hey, hold on. We'll let you know when we know something. So we begin to get up on him and you have to understand the dramatics that's going on right now. Her entire life is on this boat.
Yeah.
The town of Sitka is listening to all this. So it's very dramatic. So as we come up on scene, we set up on him. Of course, his boat is riding low, then riding high, riding low, riding high as he rides the waves. So we called down to him and said, listen, we're going to go ahead and drop a basket to you because that's how we do things.
That's how we do it.
Yeah. Going to drop a basket to you. Going to hop into it, get out of there. You're out of there. And at this time, we don't even know that this boy is with him because Clint had gotten sick and he laid him up into the front in the cabin of the boat in a child-sized survival suit. Okay. So smart thinking there.
Yeah.
And he says, okay, so Jim's trying to drive the boat, trying to manipulate it into a position that can be hovered. And of course, it just ain't happening. And at the same time, large swells are washing in up over the boat. The boat's beginning to settle now a little bit. And he gets Clint out finally, but we still don't know because we're at such a high altitude, you really can't see a whole lot what's going on.
Right.
So we start trying to hoist him off and it's just not working. We're trying to, and as we move in to make a hoist, a gust of wind catches us and starts throwing us back, pushing us all the way back. And we're fighting this, but I believe what had happened in other cases, the belly of the H3 gets up a little bit and those strong winds coming over the mountain there get up under us and just start pushing us back. Well, the pilots are pulling full collective, got the cyclic full forward, and it ain't doing nothing. We're still flying backward. It estimated somewhere around 50 knots. The pilots looked at each other and said, this is it. We thought we were going in. I was hanging on for dear life. And I was beginning to think, how am I going to get out of this thing? It was already crossing my mind. The Bluebird I'd forgotten all about the Bluebird. I was wanting to know which window I was going to go out of and how I was going to get out of the thing. About that time, John Whidden tells Carl Saylor to sit down. Well, Carl is sitting down. John felt this presence leaning over his shoulder so strongly that he told Carl to turn around and sit down. Carl said, I am sitting down. And John said, well, somebody's up here. And Carl said, well, it ain't me. About that time, we stopped going backward and the plane settled and lifted up. I kid you not.
All right, you just gave me chills right there. And I'm like,
unbelievable moment.
Wow.
It was the most unbelievable thing that we'd ever felt in our lives. The plane literally stopped. John, without looking back, tells Carl to sit down. Carl is sit down, and yet that happened. So right then, I'm beginning to realize that this is something much bigger than we are. And I'm beginning to, and it was a very emotional moment for us all. So we begin to move back in and try to pick them up. So we moved back in a couple more times, and then of course, with the motion of the boat, him having such a difficult time, he can't make any headway. And a couple of times, the superstructure of the aircraft almost, the bottom of the aircraft almost impacts the superstructure of the boat. So after a few minutes, John says, "This ain't happening." He said, they're going to have to get off. They're going to have to go in the water. They're going to get off the boat and go in the water. So Greg calls down and tells the Jim Blaze, listen, we're not going to be able to get you off this boat. You're going to have to go into the water. So he goes, picks up his son. Jim puts on his survival suit. He had it on up to his waist. He goes ahead, puts on his survival suit. But as I'm sure as you've inspected many Imperial survival suits, you realize that in order to get the thing pulled on, you have to have that wooden toggle that you place in between your thumbs that you can work it up to your neck.
Yep.
Well, he had the suit inspected and they had removed the wooden toggle and had not replaced it. So he could not get his survival suit all the way up.
Oh,
But
man.
without reservation, he clips Clint in, he walks over to the back of the boat and jumps in. And of course, he's having a hard time pushing his way away from the boat itself. So we go in and we continue to try to make these vascular recoveries, but we're in a hover, we're battling 70, 80 knot winds. The airspeed indicator is showing 78 miles an hour as in a hover. So we're battling these in tremendous winds. The wave heights are big. We're just really having all kinds of problems here right now. So we go in and we try to make a couple of recoveries. John says, hey, we're not going to get them out of it. So he says, hey, Jeff, he said, the only way we're going to get these people out of here is if you go in. Are you willing to do this? Because we had never done this before.
Right.
And of course, I had reservations. I said, but there was no way I could possibly turn this thing down.
Yeah.
Number one, you got people in the water. Number two, and I hate the life of the rescue swimmer program depended on this.
Yeah.
It really did. I mean, it really did. It was there was no way I could decline deployment. There was no way.
Not a chance.
I mean, I can't. There's not one guy in the shop that would have, in my shop, or any guy that had gone through the program would have declined it.
Nope. Not a single one.
Not a single one.
There was so much on the line at that moment in time.
Exactly.
The stuff that is going through your head right now, I can't even fathom.
Hey, let me tell you something. It was at this moment later on that I realized that God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. So, I mean, here I was, but I had been placed in this position for, I don't know, and I'm not trying to make it sound heroic here. I was scared. I really was. I was as scared though. I don't care if it'd been anything, I'd have been nervous.
Yeah.
So I said, sure, let's go. So I moved to the door, hooks up, done it, no telling how many times. Hook up on the chest, belts comes off, thumbs up, come up out of the door, I'm going down, and I can see Jim and Clint down below me. And I'm thinking, okay, this is going pretty good, Well, as I'm getting down, I can begin to feel the wind now. I mean, I can feel the weather and everything and the storm, and we're high. I don't know. John has really climbed to a serious altitude of, I know, at least 100 feet. So as I'm going down, another blast of wind, right before I get ready to touch the water, a wind catches us and starts dragging us. And I'm like, what's going on here? As I'm hitting the tops of these waves, bouncing off of them. Well, after a few minutes, or I'd say seconds, I just drop out of the sling. I'm like, okay, I'm where I'm at, So I pop up out of the water, give the okay sign, and I start looking around, and Jim and Clint are nowhere to be seen. So I'm thinking, I start, as you're taught in rescue service school, I'm yelling for them, but nothing will come out. Nothing will come out. You got the noise of the H3 just roaring up above us. Of course, and the flood hovers are just got the entire area lit up, but I can't see them anywhere. You have these huge mountains of greenish blue water that are rising up. I'm not kidding you, man. It was something I could have never imagined before, being in something like that. Cold, snowing. I'm like, what am I doing here? Oh, this is crazy. But then I look up at the pilot, and they had backed off, and they saw my predicament. And I just simply put out my hands and said, I don't know where they're at. And this nose of the helicopter slung over at about their 2 o'clock position. I still couldn't see anything, but I said, well, so I began to follow that light. So, and it was, I'd say, at least the length of a football field. So I began to swim towards them. And I mean, I would go up over one wave and swim down the side of another. Go up over one wave and swim down the side of the other. But never taking my eyes off of the light. Always, and I just used my fins. I wasn't trying to do a crawl or anything. I was finning my whole way there, kicking. And as I came up on the top of one wave, I saw for a split second a flash of reflective tape. So I went down into the next wave, came up, and there they were. So I swam up behind them and came up behind them and literally grabbed them, spun them around, looked into Jim's face, and I saw the young boy there, which really shocked me. And the little boy was totally at peace. His father had told him what was going on, and his father had explained to him what could happen. So the little boy these people were Christians. They believed in God, and they believed that you can do so much for your life, but really it is what it is. And you get these challenges, you go through life and you defeat them the best way you can. So I grabbed him and I turned him around. I saw the young boy, and Jim just kind of looked at me and he said, "You think they're going to be able to get us out of here?" And I said, "We do this shit all the time."
Yes. Yes.
It was the only thing I knew how to say, because we would, how a good bunch of guys cut up. And so I'm sure somewhere I'd heard that, but trying to reassure him that no big deal. Yeah. Every day, So anyway, so I told him, I said, they're going to move him with the basket. I'm going to grab you. I'm going to grab the basket, and I'm just going to roll you into it. As soon as you get in the basket, tuck yourself down and hang on. He said, okay. So they moved. So I give them the thumbs up for pickup. I think, I don't even know what I was doing. I don't believe for 1 second I pulled out the chem light and waved. I don't believe I did that. I mean, I just didn't. Even though everything that I had done had gone right along with the training that we've been doing for the year. Yeah. It really was. It was so, it was so burned into you. Training is the most important thing we do. There 100% can never be enough training. So, so they began to move in for the pickup, and they would get the basket close, but then it would just shoot out of my hand. I couldn't hold on to it. Normally, like, you grab the basket, push the survivors in there, give the thumbs up, they go, it wasn't happening. The plane was all over us. He would move over the top of us. He would move to the left of us. He would move to the right of us. He was all over the place. And it wasn't his fault. He was doing the best he could to fly it. Yeah. So they moved in 3 or 4 times. They would back off and try to move in and restart the whole thing again. We had only been out there maybe an hour, and all this had happened within an hour. So after about the 4th attempt, John says to the crew, he said, listen, he said, what are you guys thinking about throwing these guys out of rafting? Because this ain't happening. Holy cow. He said, if we stay here and we crash, these guys are going to die, and we're going to die. And we have nobody come by and get us. There was no backup. By this time, too, the air station had already thought we'd gone in, because they had not had any radio contact with us, because Greg Brightop was so busy backing John up on the controls that he'd gone off the radios. So we hadn't had any contact with the air station. And so they had already thought that we'd gone in. So the crew never said a word, didn't say a word. And John says, okay, he said, but you guys, we're already on the edge here. He said, we've been on the edge for quite a while here. He said, so are you sure? And nobody said a word. So John said, okay, let's give it another shot. So they moved in, and this time they get the basket just long enough to where I push the basket down, throw the survivors in, push down their legs, and Carl is holding the basket there. And I'm like, what's he doing? I keep giving the thumbs up, and he's holding the basket there. Carl had wanted me to get into the basket, thinking that one less hoist. Well, to be honest with you, how many times did you ever train where you got in the basket too? Right. Never. No. Never. No. And it wasn't anything heroic I had done. It never entered my mind. And I will say one thing, the weight could have been a factor. Putting another, at that time, I probably would have pulled a good 200, well over 200 pounds with my weight plus the other two. Yeah. So I held the basket there, kept giving him the thumbs up, and finally, man, the basket just shoots out of the water. It's swinging wildly, and he and Mark are both able to manage the basket. So they get it into the aircraft, literally dump them out into the thing and into the floor of the helicopter, get the basket out, and they go down for me. Well, I'm feeling pretty good right now. I'm like, okay, this is done. And I feel good about where I'm in my position. I feel like, okay, I can handle this. I'm here for a while. So they drop the basket to me and I go ahead and I swim to the basket. You know how quick we were able to get into the basket with your fins. And
Right.
we've done it so many times. I mean, I was in the basket in a second, grabbed on, hung on, and sat there, waited. Excuse me. Well, there was a pause for a second. And I sit there and I'm waiting. I look up and there's no helicopter above me. And then I shoot out of the water. What had happened was we had been hit by another gust of wind. He was going back. Carl was paying out slack, and I was about at least 100 yards out in front of the aircraft.
Oh my
Carl
gosh.
begins to pull slack. John's pulling collector because he doesn't want to go back into the water. I come off the top of a wave. And I slam into a wave, something I had not prepared for. I mean, it was unbelievable. John said there was a massive explosion of water. Then I come out of that one and I hit another one. And at that time, John said, I thought that we had really killed you. And I thought that the cable had probably broken with that one. Wow. And then I don't remember, I hit a third wave, but I don't remember that one. Well, then the basket broke free and I began to swing literally wildly. Because when you have that much cable paid out, you realize that, you're susceptible to slamming into the back of that helicopter, to the sponsons, to anything. But Carl and Mark got up there and really struggled with the cable and held it strong, held it firmly until they were able to get it up in the aircraft, pull me in, dump me out. And I'm fine. I mean, it had ripped, but I'd hit so hard it ripped the mask and snorkel off my head. I had the snorkel in my mouth, my mask on my head, and it took it off. And I don't even remember it. And when you had your snorkel in your mouth, you had your teeth.
Yeah, you're biting it.
Biting it, yeah.
Biting the bite guards or
whatever they were.
Yeah.
Anyway, it ripped it off my head, and I didn't even know that. I mean, because when I got in the plane, I'm like, where's that thing? It was gone. And then I went over and sat down, and I got this incredible sense of nausea. And I walked over to the little garbage can we have on the aircraft, and I projectile vomited two times. I mean, I'd never done that before in my life. And then I was fine. And the only thing I can think of, must have been an adrenaline push or something that caused me to get so sick. So we lift off and come back in and land. And of course, we're also euphoric to be back in. Of course, on our way back in, they call and say, hey, 86 is heading back. We've got, both people, got both people on board. And it was just a wonderful evening. And as we landed, we got back, we just come around the front of the aircraft, and we just couldn't believe what had just happened. It was really the most miraculous thing. And let me tell you something. We were not alone. We were not alone that night. There was a reason we were out there. It was a challenge. It was a challenge, and we met it, and it was a wonderful event. And then that's it. So, and as I go back on it.
Wow. Wow. Just wow.
So it was a great case. But I will tell you, man, the skill that our people have, I was new, but the training had been invaluable to me. That every day going out and getting in the water, every day, flight after flight after flight. Because back in those days, we only had 5 or 6 guys in the shop. So we were taking all the flights. Of course, a duty day ate up 2 guys.
Right.
A duty day, because you had an off-going guy and an oncoming guy. So that left you usually with only 4 guys. It wasn't uncommon to have a guy SIQ, have a guy on leave. Yeah. So you were really flying a lot.
Almost every other day or every third day, for sure.
Exactly. And so it was so repetitive. And so in some ways, it could have hurt me that I did not get in the basket, but man, there just wasn't room. There just wasn't room in there. And then also with Clint sitting on Jim's chest, and also Jim's suit was full of water. When I came up on him, his teeth were chattering because it was cold. The water
Yeah.
temperatures is, it was at best high 30s.
Yeah.
And so that, my friend, was the night of the Bluebird.
Woo! What a case. What a story.
It was a great story. Great,
Wow.
And then things like that, you can't live off of them, but they certainly place something inside you.
Yeah.
To let you know at one point in time something, you made a difference.
Yeah.
You made a difference, and it helped the program immensely. And I'm not kidding you, man. Right after that, Joe Rock had a case off Cape Cod, DFC, and then they just started out of nowhere. They just started happening. It wasn't because of me. It's just because the program began to quickly evolve.
Yeah.
And all the garbage that we used to catch, this, that, and the other, was gone.
Yeah.
And the program, I think, then at that point was there to stay. And we were recognized. We a lot. Got some tremendous recognition. Got to go places and do things, and sing the praises of the program, and So anyway.
And I'm going to throw this out there. You had mentioned this offline a little bit ago, but I'm going to put it out there for everybody else. You are the very first rescue swimmer in the Coast Guard to receive the Distinguished Flying Cross. And that is awesome, because that paved the way for all the rest of us.
I mean, and I'll be honest with you, I feel like that anybody in our shop would have been more than capable to compete, that they were all skilled, strong guys. They were. I mean, nobody was getting through that hellhole Pensacola if you didn't have something to you. It was, we referred to it as pre-Marecki. Lee Marecki was. Lee Marecki was the swimmer that was killed down there, and so we had gone through this hellhole of a training. So we'd all felt like this bit of how much more can you do to us? Thing. So, but I'll tell you, the whole crew, it's enabled. It gave the Coast Guard and Coast Guard Aviation such an incredible tool to use, and to make us look like what everybody thought we were.
Yeah.
I thought when I came in the Coast Guard, I thought they had these guys.
Yeah.
So
and you turned into that guy and allowed the rest of us to follow in your footsteps.
But it was anytime you're the first of something, it can either be bad, or it can either be great. Being the first isn't always something. So anyway, so that was the case of the Bluebird, and and I didn't even know about. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know about awards or DFCs or this or that or anything like that. So that was never in my mind. I didn't know you got 6 points for the service wide for a DFC. I'm like, what does that mean? But when I got back, that's what some of the guys were telling me. Like, well, hey, you're going to get DFC out of this. You can get 6 points for the service wide. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Man, that is incredible. You made a statement there, and I've said it multiple times. I'm going to reiterate it again. Every one of us that are qualified, it just so happens the alarm went off and you were the guy standing duty. Every one of us could do it. And I truly believe that statement. Every rescue swimmer, even now, guys that are, I think they're at 1,019 off the top of my head right now. Every one of them. If the alarm went off today to that case, they would go do it, and they would be able and willing to go do it. So, but you had this
absolutely without hesitation.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what they're called for,
right?
And that's what they do. And I have no doubt that every one of them would do it. And I'm going to tell you something else. The equipment changes that they've made and moved, and the Coast Guard has moved on and developed their own equipment. Has been. I mean, it's been a game changer. Going from the HBU-11 harness, from the SAR-1 to we call them Hinder sponges. The Henderson dry suits we wore today. So when I came out of rescue swimmer school, all we had were wetsuits. I got qualified in Sitka in a wetsuit.
Tell me it was like a 7 mil. I hope it was at least a 7 mil.
It was a 5 mil wetsuit. And the thing about it was that when I went to rescue swimmer school, I weighed 170 pounds. when I came out of rescue swimmer school, I lost 22 pounds.
Holy
So and when they measured you for these wetsuits, they measured you in like week 2.5. So I'd lost all this weight. So they put these things on there and they measure and they're tight as heck anyway. So by the time I get to Sitka, I put some of that weight back on, and putting that wetsuit on would nearly give you a stroke. I'm not kidding you. I mean, it was like we were soaking ourselves in talcum powder trying to get those things on. So thank God they finally relinquished and gave us dry suits. And of course, then they didn't give us dry suits with release zippers. So you go out there and you're like, you can't take a whiz.
No.
You know, if you drink a cup of coffee and you're on a 2 or 3 hour flight, you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do here? Because to get all that stuff off, and then you know the whole the whole story. I mean, my gosh. So thank God we eventually got released. There were small things like that.
Yeah.
The Trisar. You remember when I don't know, were you there when we had to have the what was it called? It was a lifting skirt that you would put on for direct deployments.
So no, that was before my time. I came in and we had I wore a Trisar. That was my first harness. And then we moved to the Triton, which I love that harness. So good job LSC with that one. But prior to that, you guys had that stuff that you guys had pretty much weaned out. You're like, yeah, that doesn't work. Yeah, that doesn't work. Yeah, that doesn't work. And that's what moved us to where I was.
Well, I had gone over to NASA to work with the Air Force, with NASA on what was supposed to be the Assured Crew Recovery Vehicle from NASA, which would launch astronauts back from the space station in the event of emergency. So we went over to Texas A&M and we worked with PJs out of the Air Force and recovering astronauts. What they had done is they had brought in a capsule. They put it in this enormous wave pool where they test oil rigs. And so me and 3 other rescue swimmers went over there and we would deploy into the water, swim up to this castle. They were making waves in this wave pool like you wouldn't believe. And we would climb up on this capsule and extract these astronauts out of this capsule into litters, all kind of things, lifting straps. And I knew then we had to have better equipment. Now ours was just as good, if not better, than the PJs.
Yeah.
For water stuff, but we needed better harnesses and stuff like that. And it was just time to move on. Now I will say one thing, that the diver's mask that we used, I thought was fine.
Yep.
Our super rocket fins, I always love those.
We still use them.
Yeah, but the other stuff had to make a change. And I'll say another thing is Daryl Jolikoska.
Yeah.
His push for the Advanced Rescue Swimmer School,
brilliant,
direct deployment.
Yep.
I mean, what would we have done during Katrina if we had not had direct deployment?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, Daryl Jolikoska, that was his baby, and Daryl was a mover and shaker. If you knew Daryl back in his younger years, you would have known that he was perfect when he came in at the time he did. He was a politician. He knew how to talk to people. He knew how to get things done. He didn't worry about the buck. If he needed money for this, he went and got the money. So Daryl was really the right man at the right time for all that. He did a lot of great things for the program. He made a lot of positive things happen that a lot of guys benefit from today.
Nice, man. Like I said, I mean, you guys really paved the way for us, and all I can hope for is that our generation that was in there, we help the guys that are doing the job now. And I think we have, because all the gear we tested and stuff as well. The rescue swimmer program in the Coast Guard right now is top notch. I mean, they do a very good job with what they do. So. But,
the what we've learned is incredible. You know, the learning curve that we started out with and where we came from, and the school now is, from what I understand, it's a bear.
Yeah.
It's a long, drawn out affair. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a real bear.
Yeah.
But hey, that's not everybody may want to do it, but not everybody can do it.
Right.
And there's a big difference there, So
Agreed.
like I tell you, man, we're just really, I was very fortunate to be a part of this, something that I never asked to do, never wanted to do. I was told I had to go. I remember I had this chief named Pat Weaver, and he's just a good old boy. And he said to me, hey, you want to go to that rescue swimmer school down there? And I said, what is it? He said, oh, you know how the Navy is. A few expletives. And I said, all right. I said, he said, you just go down there to Navy and play with them boys. They don't, Navy, they don't do a whole lot. I said, well, all right. I said, I got to do it anyway, right? And he's like, that's right. You got to do it anyway. So I said, well, I might as well get it over with. So I went down there for the first week. I thought I was going to die. They nearly killed us. There were so many guys that dropped out in the first week that they sent me back to my unit for 2 weeks. So we were going to go with the next class coming in. So I made sure those 2 weeks that I went to the pool, tried to do everything I could to get myself more prepared and in 2 weeks to go back.
Yeah. So
that saved me having that 2 weeks back. So anyway.
Incredible. Jeff, that is incredible. Everything about it. I don't want to take away from this story, but I have to move on a little bit, and I have to ask you, because you have another great case out of Sitka that didn't come with any awards. And this is one of the things that I talk about quite a bit here on this podcast is, we go out because we want to. This is what we do. We're not looking for awards. And this is one of those cases where you went out and it was, you come back as a crew. Hey, good job, fellas. Let's go clean up the gear. Let's get it ready for the next one.
Yeah, this was about 50 miles south of Sitka in a place called Cameron Pass. And we had just come in and getting my gear ready to go, joking with the fellas, and SAR alarm goes off. Grabbed the gear, ran out to the plane, and I could tell that this time there was a little bit more, not that there wasn't always, urgency in the case, but went on, got fired up. I mean, we were wheels in the wheel in no time, and the pilots were telling us, we'll brief you on the way down there. So on the way down there, they said, hey, and I'm like, man, it was so dramatic. We were 100 feet off the water, screaming down to this place, nose down, balls to the wall, and I'm thinking, what is going on? If only I'd had some music, And so we're screaming going down through there and putting on my gear, have no idea what's going on. They said, okay, we got a boat that's partially disabled. They had hit some heavy seas, and the anchor line had washed over the front of the bow of the boat, had gone back and wrapped into screws, and they had lost steerage. So, and they were washing into the rocks. There was another vessel on scene, but they weren't able to really assist that much. So we're screaming down there. Takes us not long. I think they're 50 miles south of Sitka. So we're screaming down there, get there, do a heavy left pedal turn as we sweep in there, and you can see there's a bay there, but you can see debris everywhere. The boat had gone down, and there's debris everywhere. I've never seen anything like it. Coolers, everything you could imagine, fishing nets, just all kind of garbage in the water, washed up on the shoreline there. And so we get there, and out in front of us, everything happened so fast. Out in front of us, what had happened is this old man had got out, had gone down in a dinghy, and they had thrown him a line, and he was trying to pull the boat away from the shoreline. Well, it didn't work, and the boat went into the shoreline anyway and flipped over the dinghy. So I looked out, and there's this old man hanging on to the back of this dinghy. He's 82 years old. I didn't know it at the time. He's an old man, no survival suit, just hanging on, barely hanging on. So we pull in. I immediately go to the door of the aircraft, free to fall, deploy out, swim and get him. Grab him, talk to him for just a second. He's incredibly hypothermic. But I get him, bring him over and put him into the basket, and they hoist him up. The same time they air taxi over, and one guy had been able to get to the land, to a small island. They air taxi over and get him, pick him back up, come over, air taxi back and pick me up, get me back up. Then we noticed that the fishing vessel Sephora had been there to assist, and they were down on deck and they were giving CPR to this guy. What had happened was, with the CO of the boat, the captain of the boat, had gotten his survival suit halfway on. And as the Sephora threw him a line, he put the line around him, but they couldn't change directions or slow down because they were going into the rocks themselves. So he went down. The suit worked like an anchor to him and drug him down.
No.
So by the time they were able to get him on board the vessel, I think he'd expired. So we pull into a hover and we can't get over to the Sephora. So I deploy in, swim to the boat, get on board to the boat, get up and look at him. And I realize it's Jim Trow. Now, Jim Trow had been this guy that lived up 3 houses above me. And I would go running in the morning or running in the afternoon. I'd go for a run. And when I'd come by, a lot of days I would see him out there and we would briefly speak. I never really got to know him as friends or anything, but he knew me from when I would run, and I would know him from being out in the yard. I'd see he and his wife out there doing things. And I couldn't have been more shocked if I'd woke up and my face had been sewn to the carpet. It's when I looked at him. And of course, by this time, they were given, the crew was performing CPR, and I stood there and just stared at him for a second. And I said, okay, guys, we got to get him off this thing. We're not doing him any good here. So the crew of the boat helped me pull him, and we put him into a dinghy. And I jumped back in the water, and there was a guy in the dinghy with him who kept trying to do chest compressions on him as best he could.
Yeah.
Keep the circulation alive, because it'd been quite a while, and of course the circulation is incredibly important. So I towed, so the H3 landed over in the water a good ways away, and I towed the dinghy to the platform. As they landed in the water and they put out the platform, the crew, this Jim was a big man. He was probably 6'2", 6'3", a good 250 pounds, drug him into the cabin. Yeah. And of course we got him situated. The rest of the AVI began to do mouth to mouth. I came in, ripped my gear off, and start doing chest compressions. And we do chest compressions and CPR all the way back. But he had, what I think it was, a deviated trachea, a collapsed lung. So we were really doing him no good. And his eyes were pretty much fixed, pupils were fixed. Yeah. And I knew he was pretty much dead. But the fact that it hit so close to home that he was somebody that, it's just this old man that every day I'd go running or something, or when I would see him, I'd wave at him, and we'd throw some kind of comment back, at each other. He'd like, I can't believe you're out here doing this again. Or I'm like, hey, you going out today? Or I knew he had a boat. Yeah. So I thought that was really, it was a unique case in its own way that, it was a great case. Yeah. And we rescued 2 people, Yeah. But anyway, I thought that was a really fun case.
It's one of those cases just stay in your mind.
It was so the dramatics. It was exactly what I thought it would have looked like on a movie. Screaming down the shoreline, everybody's hair on fire, radios are crackling. It was like I was looking around, I'm thinking, man, this is what it's like, even though I'd already been on the Bluebird, but that seemed more manageable. Yeah. More manageable. It's like, okay, I could actually take in the moment without being so sensor overload from the Bluebird. So, but anyway.
Incredible.
And so from there, I transferred out and went to the stand team after that. So, and that was, I guess even though I was a regular Joe, I guess they thought that I'd learned enough on the Bluebird that I could help other people. So, and not when I went to the stand team, not all units were actually even qualified. We still had several air stations that had not been brought up online. Yeah. And so we went ahead and started getting those up online, and we still had 25 air stations that probably only half of them were rescue swimmer capable at the time.
Wow. Jeez, Jeff. Those are incredible. You have such an amazing career. I do want to touch on one more, and You know what? I'm going to read it. Is that okay if I read this one too?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So this is so you've advanced now as a senior chief. Where are you stationed? Were you down in New Orleans when this happened?
No, I had been stationed in New Orleans, and I was really fortunate because I knew the city. I'd been stationed in New Orleans, and from New Orleans, um, I went to Mobile, and I was the chief of the shop there in Mobile. And when I made senior chief, I continued to shop there, and then I went over to what was prime unit after I left the shop because I was getting closer to retirement. I was 49 years old. I was getting closer to retirement, so I was going to do what I could to stay in and plan my Coast Guard afterlife.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
I stayed in. So I went to prime unit, and of course Katrina hit with such ferocity.
Yes.
And such an impact all along the Gulf Coast that when I came in that next morning, they said to me, "Hey man, we need bodies. Are you?" Because I was a rescue swimmer up until the day I retired.
Yeah.
I had to have shoulder surgery, but up until the day I retired, I was a qualified rescue swimmer. 30 years, only 23 as a swimmer because we didn't have them the first 7 years. So.
You know what? You were a swimmer for life. You're still a swimmer. What are you talking about?
But whatever. So
well, this one. So you're at Aussie Prime, and they call you back. So for all the listeners out there, this is Hurricane Katrina that rolled through New Orleans. And here's the write up for you: citation to accompany the award of the Air Medal to Aviation Survival Technician Senior Chief Jeffrey D. Tunks, United States Coast Guard. Senior Chief Petty Officer Tunks is cited for meritorious achievement in aerial flight from 30 August 2005 to 05 September 2005 while serving as rescue swimmer aboard HH-60 and HH-65 helicopters during Hurricane Katrina rescue operations. Demonstrating the exemplary aeronautical skill and superlative physical stamina, Senior Chief Tunks participated in rescue missions for 26 flight hours in urban disaster environment. On 30 August, Senior Chief Tunks deployed to a Baptist Memorial Hospital where more than 100 elderly patients required immediate evacuation. Taking charge of the situation and performing triage to determine the most critical patients for transport and operating hospitals, Senior Chief Tunks personally moved 17 patients, including one intubated patient he kept alive for the entire 35 minutes of flight by administering oxygen and rescue breathing. Next, he saved 32 lives conducting rooftop basket hoists from flooded home in the 9th Ward. During the last hoist, the flight mechanic suffered an intercom failure. Without hesitation, Senior Chief Tunks stepped in, verbalizing the aircraft conning commands to safely complete the rescues. You took over conning for the hoist operator to make sure that, so everything he was doing, you were just reiterating to the pilots. That's awesome. The next day, he located an elderly woman by cutting a hole in her roof, who was rendered too weak to climb out of the access. In absence of appropriate known procedure and with expert coordination with the flight mechanic, Senior Chief Tunks used a quick drop to winch the survivor out of the attic, so out of the hole in the attic to the rooftop, where then you could safely get recovered to the helicopter. Later, he conducted a direct deployment rescues to vertical access to 3 houses and 2 apartment complexes, consistently negotiating obstacles and debris and swinging underneath the overhangs of the balconies and windows. Senior Chief Tunks connected the survivors out of sight of the helicopter. Taking a leap of faith, he was forced to blindly trust the flight mechanic to begin hoisting as soon as it swung from the axis while physically grasping the survivors. With extraordinary stamina and physical strength, he repeated the dangerous and stressful maneuvers 24 more times. Senior Chief Tunks' skills were instrumental in saving 90 lives. His courage, judgment, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended, in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Wow. I was not in Hurricane Katrina. I did not go down. You and I talk about that a little bit. I was in Humboldt Bay at the time, and we did still need guys at the air stations. So about 3/4 of the swimmers went to New Orleans, and then the rest of us kind of hung around at our air stations. And the stories that everybody talks about out of New Orleans and Hurricane Katrina is insane. And this was one of them. 90 people. Like, you come into a hospital with 100 patients. Holy cow. Like,
yeah, the first group that we lifted off was high pregnancy mothers. They were all huge pregnant women, and we loaded them in the aircraft. And then out of nowhere, like when we came in and we landed on the roof of what was in Baptist Hospital. If you've ever seen the movie Benjamin Button, you ever seen that movie?
I have not. No.
Okay, you got to watch the movie. But anyway,
okay.
It's the hospital that he was in. It's the hospital my son was born in.
Oh,
Baptist
excellent.
Hospital there.
Okay.
Yeah, there. So we landed on the rooftop, and I jump out of the helicopter, and a doctor and 2 nurses approach me. Of course, their head's still turning. There's a variety of aircraft circling above this hospital. And I jump out of the helicopter, and he comes over to me, and he says, and these people, you could tell they had been there for an extended period of time. They looked rough. They were exhausted. And they said to me, "How many can you take?" And I said, "How many do you have?" And he pointed back to this corridor. And then through this corridor was wheelchairs lined with people. The first person was this elderly Black gentleman that they were bagging. He had no toes. He had no fingers. It had been amputated. But he was coherent. He could see. His eyes were moving around. And every 4 seconds, bagging full of air. Wow. So I said, we can probably take, I think the flight mechanic was John Burns. So I referred to John. John, how many do you feel comfortable with? And I think we took 7 or 8 of the women, and we took the gentleman, and we loaded him in first. And of course, then we had to bring in these poor pregnant women who I felt terribly sorry for, Yeah. Because, women who are pregnant, it's bad enough having a high risk pregnancy, but to be huge with all that's going on in New Orleans anyway, the stress of that, I'm surprised they weren't delivering them left and right just from the pure anxiety and stress, But then we got them on the aircraft, and I took over bagging the patient, and we lifted off and flew to New Orleans. When we got to New Orleans, we got to Baton Rouge. The hospital we landed to was more than happy to take the female patients, but they would not take the elderly gentleman. They said, we can't handle it. And I said, well, I'm like, what do you want us to do with him? They said, we don't know, but we can't take him here. So we go to another hospital, and the nurse that's with us takes over bagging him, and I run in, and I said, we got somebody out here that is in dire need of medical attention. I said, he's being bagged right now, and he's not going to make it for much longer. Well, they said, we can't take him here either.
Oh my God.
So I take off my flight helmet, and I slam it against the wall. And I said, what the hell are you running around here? I said, we got a patient out here. And I said, we're going to leave him in the parking lot because we've got other business to take care of. And of course, we're going to leave him in the parking lot.
Right. No.
But that was the only card I had in the deck.
Yeah.
Little
trump card.
So I slammed. So then I get everyone's attention. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I done here? I'm just trying to be a little dramatic, but, of course, I'm in my shorty wetsuit. I got my gear on, looking pretty good,
Yeah.
So anyway, but at the time I wasn't feeling, I was very distraught because we needed to offload this patient. That's not what we do.
Right.
We can't fly all over Baton Rouge trying to find a helicopter. A hospital's going to take this guy.
Right.
So finally, a couple of nurses or interns get in a cart. They scoot out there with us, and they take the patient, and then they take him off our hands, which was a huge relief. Then we fly back to another place, and we load incubators. into our helicopter, and we carry incubators back, land, and drop the incubators off at Ochsner Medical Center. And as we made our approach into Ochsner Medical Center, I saw something I'd never seen in this country before, something that totally blew me away. And if it wasn't serious enough seeing the city flooded, this got me numbered. At an overpass, under an overpass, there were hospital beds lined up with patients under this overpass. I thought I would never see that in this country.
Wow.
That really shocked me, that in this country that's so rich in everything, that we would have to do that. So we dropped off the incubators, and then we went house hunting, and through that, and you could see where these huge holes had been ripped in these roofs, and we were literally lifting people out of these roofs and off of these balconies and things like that. Guns falling out of their pockets.
Jeez, man.
I mean, really, guns popping out, falling into the deck of the helicopter. And they weren't going to shoot us. They weren't going to rob us. They just wanted to get the heck out of there, So we did that all night long. I can't remember. I think we covered 32 people that night. We flew into the bag and headed back. And then a couple of days later, we came out, and I got back on the plane again. And as I got back on, as I was getting ready to go on the plane, I had these two super pilots from Miami. I don't remember their names, but one of them had been a prior Special Forces guy and had been, I think, with the 160th in the Army.
Okay.
Well, he'd come into the Coast Guard. A phenomenal pilot. That guy got in there, and he was. I think we were in a Bravo model. I think we were flying a Charlie model, so we were underpowered as it was.
Okay.
He got in there and he manipulated those engines and those power restrictions, and he just did an unbelievable job getting us into some of those places. I got to tell you, it was. For us, I had been thoroughly trained in direct deployment. So my job was deployment, but it was a different animal for those guys up front. I got to tell you right now that the guys up front, tremendous skill set. But anyway, we moved into this place, and as we're getting ready to take off, this cameraman from the Discovery Channel says, "Hey, I want to come on with you guys. Do you mind if we go?" And the pilot says, "Well, where do you want to go?" He says, "I want to go to the Cloverleaf." Well, if you were in Katrina, you know that the Cloverleaf was where we were dropping everyone off. And he said, "Sure, jump on. We'll take it to the Cloverleaf." Well, as we're coming into New Orleans, East New Orleans, it's flooded. That's the Ninth Ward down in there, but pretty nice houses out in East New Orleans. I mean, once you get further out, pretty nice homes. And as we come to New Orleans, you could see people waving flags outside their windows. So the pilot says, "I can't leave these people in there." So we come into this one house. First house we go to, of course, oh boy, he's got his camera rolling. He's getting some good stuff. So this man and come to find out it was a man and his sister. And they were leaving out the window and they were waving at us, and the pilot briefs us on what we're going to do. So I hook up, go down for a direct deployment. I was able to get down. I was able to get down and push myself off of the wall. I pushed myself off twice. And on the second push, I was able then to swing in and catch the window sill, the window ledge there.
Yeah.
Drape my leg over it. The person came over and asked me if they could take anything. And I said, "Not very much. What do you have?" And I think they grabbed a bag of clothing or something.
Yeah.
I immediately put the rescue strap on them, and seeing that the plane was up above us, but it was over, and we were under a hang.
Yeah.
A hang. So I grabbed the person, gave the thumbs up, and as I began to see him take slack, I just dropped out and we just swung under the thing to get more of a vertical lift.
Yeah.
And that works fine. So we went up, got her in, came back down. And when I got in the second time, I was heartbroken. They had a beautiful Rottweiler in there with them.
Oh.
And he said, "Can we take the dog?" And I said, "I don't know how we'll do it." I said, "I don't have anything here to lift the dog by. I don't know if it'll bite my face off when we start doing this." He said, "No problem." So he had gotten him some water and some food. And I just said to him, and of course, when we're yelling this, and I said, I pray you get back to him soon. And he just kind of looked defeated, but he said, oh, okay. So we got in the, so we hooked up, did the exact same scenario and lifted up. But that haunted me.
Yeah.
The amount of animals that were left there, and I didn't realize that. And I'm not saying that the lives weren't important, but people, people love their animals.
Right.
So I felt that really touched him. And then we moved on, and we moved over, and we could see this thing sticking out of a roof. And as we moved over to the scene, a woman was down inside an attic, but she couldn't get out. So they lowered me down, and I got over on the attic, and I initially tried to physically lift her up, but she was probably, I don't know, I'd say she was a kind of a heavy woman. I'd say 150, 160 pounds. And I just couldn't get the leverage to get her out. I had to bend over too far. I couldn't use my legs at all to lift her out. It was going to be a back lift. So I'm thinking, how am I going to get her out of here?
Yeah.
So I called for the hoist. I called for the hook to come down. My flight mechanic, Rick Viggy, super skilled guy.
I know Rick. Oh, Rick Viggy, super good guy.
Yeah. Rick, phenomenal flight mechanic, big, strong guy. And we worked, even though I don't know that we'd ever worked together before, we worked great in unison that day. The training, man.
Yeah.
Doing it so much, I think we had done just about everything in aviation that there was no threat, nothing had ever been unturned. We'd done everything. So anyway, I think he understand my dilemma that I was in. I just couldn't get enough strength with my legs to lift her out. Yeah. I had to go too far in. And I don't know what the heck she cut that hole with. Must have been, but she had literally been in there all night long because her house was completely flooded all the way up into the attic, and she was standing on something. But you know how attics are, and attics are high now.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I could never, in the attic of my home, I could never get out of the attic of my home. So she was able to somehow or another cut a hole into this house. So I got the quick strap over, got it on her. She handed me a bag full of clothes. I lifted it up and set it on the thing. And they got the aircraft right over the top of us. And Rick slowly began to take attention on the hook. And she began to lift out of there really slow, watching to make sure that she didn't, as I was protecting her, that she didn't get any of these jagged edges. Yeah. Because the wood was very jagged around there. And he began to lift her up, and she cleared. And once she got her, and once her upper torso cleared, then I knew he had it. And then I just reached down, grabbed the bag, and up we went.
Wow.
And that was a very nice, so we got her in the aircraft, and then we continued.
That's a great job
around.
On the flight
yeah, it was a great job.
Solid job.
Solid. The pilot. I'm telling you, man, the skill set, unmatched anywhere. The guys are on board together, and it's just because we do it so much that it becomes second nature. Yeah. I would guarantee you, it is so embedded in guys that guys could go back 15, 20 years after being retired and still do it. I would bet that there's not hardly any guys out there who did it for any length of time.
Yeah. I'm not taking that bet because I know better.
I believe they could.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we continued to fly around that day. He got some excellent footage, which was eventually on the Discovery Channel.
Nice.
And it was really great. And we landed at the Cloverleaf and dropped those people off the Cloverleaf. They had ambulances there and everything. And we went on, and we had several more really, really good rescues that day. And I mean, coming in, I would go on. I'd learned that technique of kicking off and flying back into something. And Rick had learned it too. So we were really working in unison and recovering a lot of people that day. So I think that day alone, we recovered 26. And what we did, we landed with 5 hours and 30 minutes, fueled up, and continued to fly the rest of that evening until we had probably 10 hours of flight time that morning.
Wow.
And then I flew 2 more days in Katrina, got some excellent SAR. It was Super Bowl of SAR, man.
Absolutely.
But I would say,
it was great to have you down there too, as as a senior chief, a leader, and to really select and direct to, a lot of that. Because, I mean, your name has gone really throughout the race. I mean, I know who you were. Even as a young third with just coming out of school, you're like, oh, yes, Jeff Tunks. Yeah, you know that name. Okay. So to have you down there as somebody else that the younger guys can lean on and to look up to is you can't ask for someone better. So,
well, I appreciate that. That's very nice of you to say. I felt really, like I said, man, I was blessed with the career I had. Number one, to go in and be able to do some of the incredible things that I got to do, and have the support for it. But I'm going to tell you something, man, you cannot say enough about, the rescue swimmer crew position is a very difficult place to get. Going through the school, it's not easy. It sucks a lot of the time. It's a long process. There's a tremendous amount of anxiety as you go through the school. You're a day away from being reverted. You really are. Nobody wants to start over again.
Nope.
It's kind of like getting hit in the head with a hammer once, but all right, but then it's coming again.
Yeah.
You want to get to the second time. But and to be, and I have all the respect for these new guys coming out, and while the old breed, we went through a lot, and everybody gets their own unique piece of the experience, but I'm so appreciative of the fact now that there's no more of this animosity. When we were first coming into the rate, there was animosity. It's just human nature. Human nature invaded what was right. It did. Human nature, about everybody wanting their own piece of the pie, it invaded our clear thinking.
Right.
So.
And a lot of people don't like change. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Well, just because it's not broken doesn't mean you can't upgrade and make something better. And that's what the Coast Guard did. And it was a great move by Congress to make it, to make that move. And it was a great move by the Coast Guard to make it happen. And you guys that led the way, everything you guys did, it just made it awesome for us.
Well, it's incredible to know that the whole thing got started from the time of the word to go down. It got ramped up and got going in 2 years. That's really something for a program like that, when it was met with gatekeeper after gatekeeper after gatekeeper saying, we don't need that here, we don't need that here, and they just kept pushing it. And we would, when I was in Sitka, we first got there, and we're not getting any support here, we're not getting any support here, we're not getting any support here. Is the program going to survive? And Larry Farmer would say, don't worry, fellas, it ain't going nowhere. It ain't going nowhere. And we were like, we're barely surviving here. We got snorkels on. The program has snorkels on right now. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's much stronger than you think. So that helped a lot that we were being supported there. But it was a hard road to go in the beginning. Just human nature, man, can sometimes destroy clear thinking and animosity and it just did. Everybody wanted to be us.
Everybody. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. You hear it, and that's okay. It's not for everybody. You said it earlier. It is not for everybody to be able to do this job, and not everybody can do this job.
It's not for everybody. It's not. It takes a unique skill set. The swimming is the hardest skill set to find out there. For someone to be that comfortable in the water and to be able to, I'm a little perplexed that they don't, go to swim meets to try to find future candidates.
Yeah.
Not that that's important, but in swimmer school, it is very important. Your EMT skills are vital.
Yep.
Your ability to package patients, vital. Your ability to do, and while the AST rate itself, the AST job, it's not rocket science. It's still very, very important. Life support gear is very important.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so, but the rescue swimmer skill itself and being able to work in the water for extended periods of time, I mean, it's something that not everybody has.
Nope.
You know, it's not.
Oh, incredible. Incredible. Like this. Oh, you are so accurate with all of your statements. So I'll tell you what, Jeff, I have had you here with me for quite a while. I don't want to take any more time, but if you have some words of wisdom you would like to pass on, I know everybody would love to hear it.
Well, I would just tell everyone to appreciate every day, to appreciate the job you've been given, to look at it as a privilege, to never hurry the end, to appreciate your training, just to live in a world of being blessed, because that's what we all are.
Yeah.
And and I'm going to tell you something. When you fly out on these missions, never think you're alone. There's going to be there. You will always have somebody in there with you, and you have to believe this. I'm a firm believer. Like I said, that night, God didn't call the qualified; He qualified the called. And I will go to my grave believing that, because it was the way it was. And then I realized that all these things that make you have to dig deep are gifts from God. These challenges that you have to dig deep for, to find reason for them, and to make them work, and to write the book of your life. That's what it's all about. And you know what? Everybody wants to read a good book.
Everybody wants to read a good book.
And I mean, there's only so. I mean, people recognize BS.
Yes.
But when it's real, you can't doubt it. And I think that's the thing about a lot of good people who go into the Coast Guard, regardless of whatever rate you pick. I mean, it's amazing that if you'll listen to people who have been in the Coast Guard, how the tales they'll want to tell, they all revert back to it. Yeah. And even guys who went warrant and R-rate and who went over into the officer corps, they still look at their rescue swimmer world as the greatest time in the Guard.
Right.
Even though they promoted out of it, they still look back at their days as rescue swimmers and the little joy of the brotherhood there, right, as some of the best days of their career, the most notorious days of their career. So I would just tell everybody, feel blessed of where you're at. Do the best job you can every day, going prepared every day. Take care of your equipment, support your fellow swimmers, and have a great time. I don't think I ever laughed as much as I did my 30 years in the Coast Guard. I never met such knuckleheads, right, such funny guys. I mean, guys that, the pranks, but solid dudes, man, solid dudes. Yeah. So it was great being on with you today. I hope you got something out of this.
Absolutely.
And good luck with your podcast here.
Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much.
I think you're doing a great thing, and
thank you.
A lot of stories to be told. Thank you.
There are indeed, and it's guys like you that have the old school stories that, a lot of the younger guys, they don't know this story, and to hear it firsthand for me is, and I feel blessed right now. So thank you.
So, well, thank you. I'm 46.
I love it. I love it.
I'm 46, man, out of now, it's a growing number. And
yep.
And I feel good about being 46. I wish I was 46. I'm not anymore.
You know what? Yeah. Once a swimmer, always a swimmer. There's nothing.
That's true, man.
You're never going to lose it.
No, it's part of your DNA.
Yeah.
So your DNA, and it's such a big part of your life. But like I said, it was the guys, the guys that you worked with every day. Such serious guys, such skilled guys, great workers, and funny, man. Funny. I'm not kidding you. I go back and I think of guys like Sean Mogan. I don't know if you ever knew Sean Mogan. Tremendous guy. He was a bulldog. I would have gone into a fight with him. I'd have fought anybody with him by my side, making sure he's going to take over for me. Jerry Sanabi, Jerry
Oh.
Sonabi, skilled guy. Jerry Sonabi is one of the smartest guys I ever knew. Didn't know how to swim before he went to rescue swimmer school. Didn't know how to swim. Had to learn how to swim. But when you saw him in the water, man, the guy was a machine in the water. So
Incredible.
yeah. So I mean, I can just go on with names for a guy named Ricky Blevich, a machine, an animal, an absolute beast. These guys were. So anyway, I'm sure you have them in your life too. You know, guys that
there are a lot of guys that made a big impact in my life. There are still guys that are making impacts to my life, and I'm very thankful for everyone that I've met. And this is around the world too. You know, there are guys that I've gotten tips and tricks of from Australia and New Zealand, up in Europe. It's just that we have such a similarity. You just speak a little different language, or your tone is a little bit different here, but we're all doing the same job, and every one of us have the same mentality. It's
a tremendous network. It is a tremendous network that is in the search and rescue world, you know, that has come out. And I mean, and when people hear that what you did, you know, they're always like, of course, I will say one thing. Well, the Guardian was kind of it was a good movie. But, you know, that did wonders for us, you know, because the actual rescue scenarios were pretty good.
Yeah.
And you know, but like they say, you know, some people make movies, some people make history. So, you know,
well, you have made history, sir.
They act what we do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate you coming on to the Real ResQ podcast with me. It has been an absolute honor and an absolute privilege to have you. So,
well, thank you. I was happy to do it, and best of luck and best wishes always. Okay.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right.
And with that, everybody, we are out of here. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute and, like my daughters like to tell me, like and subscribe. Oh yeah. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story that they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you as a guest. Or if you have any questions about any of the rescues or anything else that we talk about here on this podcast, send me an email, therealresq@gmail.com. That's therealresq@gmail.com. You can also check us out on our Facebook and Instagram page at The Real ResQ. That's at therealresq. I also want to give a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember that when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.